She sat alone at the wedding, until a stranger whispered, "Pretend you're with me tonight." Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. Elena Moore sits on the edge of a white folding chair, hands folded around a small satin clutch, listening to the sound of laughter ripple across the ballroom like it belongs to someone else. Around her, crystal glasses clink, heels brush marble, and names are called with affection she no longer recognizes. She is early, she tells herself, or maybe forgotten. Either way, no one notices the empty seat beside her. The wedding coordinator avoids her eyes. A bridesmaid pauses, frowns, then keeps moving. Elena straightens her spine anyway. 3 years ago, she loved the groom. 2 years ago, she convinced herself she was fine. Tonight is supposed to prove that healing is real, that she can exist in the same room as her past without shrinking. But her pulse betrays her, loud and uneven, thudding against the thin fabric of her dress. The room smells like roses and champagne, sweetness layered over tension. She watches the bride glide past, radiant and untouchable, and feels the weight of being visible in the wrong way. Conversations hush when she stands. Someone whispers her name, then another. Elena feels the heat rise to her cheeks as she realizes the seating chart has no place for her. No table, no card, just space. She considers leaving, counting the steps to the exit, rehearsing a polite smile for anyone who asks. That is when a shadow falls across her shoulder. A man she has never seen before leans close enough that only she can hear him. His voice is calm, low, certain. "Pretend you're with me. Just for tonight." Elena turns, startled, meeting dark eyes that do not flinch. He is dressed simply, but the room seems to bend around him, guests stepping aside without knowing why. She should ask his name. She should refuse. Instead, she notices how his presence quiets the noise inside her chest. He does not touch her, yet somehow blocks the stares, the murmurs, the silent questions. Time stretches. Seconds feel heavy. Accepting means lying. Refusing means standing alone. The music swells, the doors to the ceremony hall begin to close, and Elena understands that whatever choice she makes will be seen by everyone. Her fingers tighten around the clutch. She exhales, slow and measured, and nods once, stepping toward the stranger and into a story she does not yet understand. Behind them, a camera flashes, freezing the moment into gossip before it has a name. Elena feels the room exhale, disappointed, curious, hungry. The stranger offers his arm, not demanding, simply present. She hesitates, then hooks her fingers lightly, surprised by the steadiness there. Heat radiates through fabric, a quiet promise of shelter. As they walk, conversations rearrange themselves, laughter returning with an edge. Someone clears a throat. Someone smiles too wide. Elena's breath evens out, her steps matching his. She notices details she should not. The faint crease at his brow, the patience in his pace, the way he never rushes her. At the doorway, an usher opens the rope without question. Power, Elena thinks, is sometimes just the absence of obstacles. Music swells again, strings lifting the air. The bride glances over, her smile tightening like a knot pulled too fast. Elena lifts her chin. She is not brave, she is protected. The stranger murmurs that she can leave anytime. She nods, grateful for the exit he is offering even as she chooses to stay. The ceremony begins. Vows echo. Petals fall. Elena keeps her eyes forward, aware that tonight has already changed shape, and that whatever the ceremony ends in a blur of applause and soft music, and Elena realizes she has not looked at her phone once. That alone feels strange. As guests rise and turn toward cocktail hour, the man beside her releases his arm as if he had never held it, giving her space without abandoning her. For a moment, they stand shoulder to shoulder, watching the crowd reorganize itself, and Elena feels the echo of an old habit tug at her, the instinct to disappear quietly before someone decides she does not belong. She remembers a smaller wedding, 3 years ago, held in a vineyard 2 hours north, where she laughed too loudly because she was nervous and Believe love was something you earned by being agreeable. That night ended with promises that evaporated in the morning. Tonight feels different, heavier, as if the room itself is waiting to see what she will do next. The stranger speaks again, low and even, asking if she is all right. Elena nods, surprised by the honesty of it. She tells him she almost left. He says he noticed. They move with the flow toward the terrace where servers pass flutes of champagne. The air cooler, the city lights stretching beyond the railing like a held breath. Elena takes a glass she does not drink. She scans faces, recognizing colleagues she once planned events with, friends of friends who stopped returning her calls after the breakup, and the bride's circle, polished and composed, eyes sharp with curiosity. Her name surfaces again, softer now, framed by questions. Who is he? How long have they been together? Elena feels the familiar urge to explain, to make herself small and reasonable. Instead, she hears herself say nothing. The stranger seems to understand the rules without being told. He introduces himself simply as Julian when someone approaches, offering no last name, no credentials, no invitation to dig deeper. The effect is immediate. Conversations reset. Smiles widen, then settle. Elena notices how people wait for him to finish speaking before they do, how a path opens when they walk. Power, she thinks again, is quiet. Julian asks if she would like some air. They step closer to the railing. From here, the music softens, the laughter becomes a distant tide. Elena tells him she did not plan to make a scene. He says scenes are often planned by rooms, not people. She almost laughs. The truth spills out anyway. She says she was invited because the bride wanted proof of winning. She says she accepted because she wanted to prove something to herself. Julian listens without interruption, eyes steady, hands resting on the cool stone. When she finishes, he does not offer advice or consolation. He only says that surviving a room does not require permission. The words land gently, like a coat placed over her shoulders without being announced. A photographer passes, lifting a camera. Julian angles his body slightly, blocking the lens without comment. Elena exhales. A server offers canapes. Julian takes one, then pauses, glancing at Elena before choosing another and handing it to her. The small courtesy feels enormous. She realizes she is hungry, that nerves have replaced appetite all evening. She takes a bite and tastes lemon and salt, grounding. Across the terrace, the bride catches sight of them again. This time her smile does not reach her eyes. She says something to a woman in a silk wrap, who looks over, assesses, then looks away. Elena's stomach tightens. Julian notices and asks if she wants to leave early. The offer is real. She considers it. Leaving would be easier. Staying would be louder. She thinks of the empty chair, the whispers, the moment when a voice beside her changed the equation. She shakes her head, surprising herself. Not yet. Julian nods once, as if confirming a shared understanding. They stand together, not touching, not pretending beyond what the room insists on believing. Elena feels a shift inside her, a subtle realignment. She does not know who Julian is or why he chose her, only that the choice has weight. Somewhere behind them, a glass shatters and laughter spikes. The night presses on. Elena looks out at the lights again and wonders what it would mean to stop apologizing for existing in spaces that hurt her, and whether this quiet alliance will hold when the room decides to test it. Elena begins to notice the pattern the longer she stands beside Julian, subtle at first, then unmistakable. People do not interrupt him. They wait. When he turns his head, conversations soften, shoulders square, and paths clear as if the room has learned a language she never studied. She watches a man in a tailored navy suit approach with a confident smile that falters halfway through a sentence when Julian answers with a calm nod. No explanation follows, yet the man retreats, suddenly busy with his glass. Elena feels the power gap like a change in air pressure, gentle but undeniable. It unsettles her because it is not loud. It does not announce itself. It simply exists. She asks Julian what he does, keeping her voice light. He says he works with capital, then adds, after a beat, that he prefers not to discuss business at weddings. The boundary is clean, respectful, final. She accepts it without feeling dismissed, which surprises her. Nearby, a group laughs too hard, then glances their way. Elena senses the bride's attention again, sharp and calculating, the way planners assess risk. She remembers a time when rooms measured her worth by association, by who stood close enough to claim her. Tonight, that calculus has shifted, and it makes her uneasy. She is used to earning safety by being useful. Standing beside Julian requires nothing. It simply is. A woman with a jeweled clutch approaches, eyes flicking between them, curiosity sharpened by restraint. She compliments Elena's dress, asks where they met. Elena opens her mouth, ready to minimize, but Julian answers first, saying they met tonight, and that it has been unexpectedly pleasant. The truth is incomplete, yet kind. The woman smiles, satisfied, and moves on. Elena feels a small swell of relief, followed by guilt. She does not want to be anyone's secret, even a benevolent one. She tells Julian as much, quietly. He listens, then says that secrets are different from privacy, and that tonight he is offering the latter, not the former. The distinction settles her. Music drifts from inside as the band shifts into a slower set. A coordinator taps Julian's shoulder to ask if he would like a table moved closer to the railing. He declines politely, and the coordinator apologizes as if she has asked something inappropriate. Elena blinks. She has spent years smoothing logistics, negotiating with Venus, absorbing blame for decisions she did not make. Watching someone decline without consequence feels like witnessing gravity misbehave. Julian asks if she wants to dance. She laughs, startled, and shakes her head. Not yet, she says. He accepts without comment. They talk instead about neutral things, the weather turning earlier than expected, the city changing block by block, the strange intimacy of events designed to perform happiness. Julian admits he dislikes weddings because they compress expectation into spectacle. Elena agrees, confessing she used to believe love required an audience. He considers this, then says that audiences are fickle, but witnesses matter. The word lodges in her chest. A photographer circles again. Julian shifts so Elena is half hidden, then stops himself and steps aside, giving her the choice. She steps forward, lifting her chin. The shutter clicks. Somewhere behind the lens, a narrative begins to form that Elena does not control. The bride crosses the terrace, smile fixed, congratulations rehearsed. She thanks Julian for attending, remarks on Elena's timing, sharp as a pin. Elena waits for the familiar sting. Instead, Julian responds with courtesy edged in steel, praising the event's precision and wishing the couple well. He says Elena has impeccable taste in choosing moments. The compliment is abstract yet unmistakable. The bride blinks, recalibrates, and retreats with grace that feels earned at a cost. Elena's breath catches. She did not realize how much she had braced for impact. The band announces the first dance. Couples drift inside. Julian asks again if she would like to leave. The option remains open, unpressured. Elena looks at the doorway, then back at the terrace where the night holds steady. She says she wants to stay a little longer, to understand the room from this side of it. Julian nods, approving without pride. She studies his face and notices a faint shadow beneath his composure, a weariness that suggests this power exacts a toll. She wonders what it has cost him to move through rooms like this without armor. As the music swells, Elena realizes the danger is not that people will misunderstand her, but that she will begin to see herself differently, not as an afterthought or a lesson, but as someone worth standing beside without explanation. The thought thrills and frightens her in equal measure, and when Julian meets her gaze, she senses that whatever has begun tonight will not remain contained within the borders of a wedding. The shift happens the moment Julian offers his arm again and guides Elena toward the center of the reception, not away from it. The doors to the main hall stand open, lights spilling across the floor, music swelling with expectation, and Elena feels the familiar instinct to resist the spotlight. This time she does not. She takes one measured step, then another, aware of the way heads turn in sequence, curiosity rippling outward like a dropped stone. The alliance they formed in a whisper now becomes visible, undeniable. The room recalculates. Servers pause. Conversations stutter. Elena feels the weight of consequence settle onto her shoulders, heavy but clarifying. This is what it costs to be seen. Julian moves at her pace, not faster, not slower, a subtle courtesy that steadies her breathing. When they pass the head table, the bride's gaze locks onto Elena with practiced composure that barely conceals irritation. The groom looks away. Elena does not look at him. She focuses on the even rhythm of Julian's steps, the quiet authority in his posture, the way his presence alters the room without effort. They reach a table near the dance floor that had been conspicuously empty. A staff member appears, flustered, apologizing for the confusion and offering seats as if they had been reserved all along. Elena recognizes the performance and lets it stand. Sitting feels like a declaration. Julian waits until she is settled before taking his place beside her, not across, close enough that the space between them feels intentional. A place card appears with her name spelled correctly. The detail lands harder than she expects. Around them, speculation hums. Who is he? Why is she here? Elena resists the urge to explain. She remembers what Julian said about privacy and allows it to protect her. A toast begins. Glasses lift. The bride thanks family, friends, sponsors. Elena hears the word sponsors echo and understands something else, a thread connecting Julian to the machinery of the evening. Power has a source. The realization sharpens the stakes. This is no longer a private kindness. This is a public alignment. Julian leans in slightly and murmurs that if at any point she wants to leave, he will walk her out without ceremony. The offer is clean, unconditional. Elena considers the exit again and chooses to stay. The band strikes a brighter note. Applause follows. The photographer returns, angling for a frame that includes Julian. Elena straightens, refusing to be cropped. The shutter captures them together. Somewhere, an image is born that will travel faster than context. A woman from the bride's circle approaches with a practiced smile, congratulating Elena on her timing and asking if she and Julian will be attending the after-party downtown. The question is a test. Elena feels it. Julian answers without hesitation that they have other plans. The woman nods, reassessing, and moves on. Elena exhales. She realizes her hands are steady. Food arrives. Elena tastes again, grounding herself in texture and warmth. She listens to fragments of conversations nearby, noticing how they bend around Julian, how people lower their voices, how deference appears without request. She wonders what it would be like to move through the world with that kind of gravity and what it has taken from him in return. As the first dance begins, couples gather. The lights dim. Julian asks if she would like to step outside for a moment. On the threshold, Elena pauses, glancing back at the room that once threatened to swallow her. The threat remains, but it has changed shape. Outside, the air is cooler, quieter. Julian does not speak immediately. He gives the moment space. Elena tells him she understands now that saying yes earlier meant more than she realized. He nods, acknowledging the cost without apology. He says that sometimes the only way to stop a room from deciding for you is to decide first. The words settle. From inside, applause swells again. Elena feels a pull, not toward the groom or the past, but toward a future she did not plan, one that has already begun to take form without her consent. She looks at Julian, searching for signs of regret or calculation, and finds neither. Only resolve. When they return inside together, Elena knows the night has crossed a line. The whisper has become a statement. Whatever comes next will not be optional, and the room, sensing it, watches more closely than before. Time slows after they return to the reception, not because the music softens, but because Elena begins to notice the smallest shifts. The way being beside Julian changes the gravity of ordinary moments. They do not rush. They do not perform. They move with the deliberate ease of people who know they are being watched and refuse to feed the spectacle. A server approaches and asks Julian if he would prefer sparkling or still water. He asks Elena instead. She chooses sparkling, surprised by the care. The glass arrives chilled, condensation slick against her fingers, a mundane luxury that steadies her. They speak quietly, about neutral things that somehow feel intimate because no one is leaning in to listen. Julian asks how she learned to read rooms so quickly. Elena tells him she planned events for years, that she learned to anticipate conflict before it announced itself. He nods, saying that anticipation can be a form of armor. She says it can also be exhausting. The admission feels safe here. Around them, the dance floor fills. The bride's laughter carries, bright and controlled. Elena does not flinch this time. She notices how Julian positions himself so that Elena always has a clear path, how he never traps her against a table or wall, how his presence offers an exit even while encouraging her to stay. when someone approaches with a congratulatory smile that borders on interrogation. Julian answers politely and deflects with grace, never revealing more than necessary. Elena begins to trust the rhythm of it, the quiet competence, the way he never oversells or undercuts her. Trust, she realizes, does not arrive with fireworks. It arrives with consistency. They watch the cake being cut, the ritual both absurd and tender. Elena remembers the last time she stood at a wedding and believed it promised permanence. She tells Julian that weddings used to make her nervous long before her own story ended. He says they make him cautious. He does not elaborate. The restraint is intentional, a door left closed but not locked. Later, as the band shifts again, Julian asks if she wants to dance, not as a test but as an option. Elena hesitates, then agrees. On the floor, they stand at a respectful distance, swaying more than dancing, allowing the space between them to breathe. Julian follows her lead. When she steps back, he steps back. When she leans in, he meets her halfway. The room seems to tilt, attention sharpening, but Elena feels grounded. She notices the warmth of his hand at her waist, light and steady, a contact that feels protective without being possessive. The song ends. Applause breaks the spell. They return to their table, the connection intact but unclaimed. Elena feels something unfamiliar take root, not desire alone but recognition. She realizes she feels seen without being scrutinized. As the night deepens, conversations thin and sharpen. A man with a confident smile approaches Julian and thanks him for his support, mentioning a foundation Elena recognizes by name. Julian responds briefly, redirecting credit to a team Elena does not know. When the man leaves, Elena understands another piece of the puzzle, the scale of Julian's influence hinted at but never displayed. It makes her wary. Power can change the terms of affection without asking. Julian seems to sense the shift. He tells her that tonight was not a transaction. The words matter. She believes him, though belief feels like a risk. Outside, the city hums, traffic distant. Elena realizes hours have passed without the familiar knot in her chest tightening. She thinks of the empty chair from earlier and feels a strange gratitude for the silence that followed, for the whisper that interrupted a pattern she thought was fixed. The bride passes again, her smile tight, eyes assessing. Elena meets her gaze calmly and looks away, refusing the exchange. Julian notices and says nothing, which feels like support. The band announces the final set. Julian asks if she would like to leave together or separately. The choice is hers. Elena weighs it, feeling the room lean in, hungry for a conclusion. She says together, not because she owes him anything, but because she wants the night to end with intention. As they gather their things, Elena senses the beginning of something that will not resolve easily, a connection shaped by restraint and respect, by quiet decisions made under pressure. When they step toward the exit, whispers follow, questions forming behind them. Elena does not turn back. She knows this is only the middle, that the true test will come when the room is louder and the stakes higher, and she wonders, as the doors open to the cool night air, whether the steadiness she feels now will hold when the story demands more. The night air feels cooler as the doors close behind them, muting the music and applause into a distant thrum. Elena pauses on the steps, city lights stretching ahead, the valet line a slow ribbon of movement. Julian does not rush her. He stands beside her, hands loose at his sides, presence steady without demand. For the first time since the whisper that started everything, the room no longer decides for them. Elena realizes her shoulders have dropped. She breathes more fully. Julian asks if she wants to walk for a minute before calling a car. She agrees. They move along the edge of the property where hedges soften the noise, and the night carries the scent of rain that never quite falls. Elena tells him she feels strange, like she stepped out of a current and does not yet know where she stands. Julian says that currents have a way of revealing what they hide once you leave them. The answer feels personal. She glances at him, noticing the careful way he chooses words, the restraint that seems practiced. She asks, gently, why he hates weddings. The question hangs, unforced. Julian slows, then stops beneath a streetlight that pools amber on the sidewalk. He does not look at her right away. He says he does not hate weddings, not exactly. He says he hates promises made for rooms instead of people. Elena listens, resisting the urge to fill the silence. Julian tells her there was a wedding once where he stood at the front and waited, believing in certainty because certainty had always rewarded him. He says the certainty did not arrive. He says the doors stayed closed. The words are simple, but the space around them is heavy. Elena feels the weight of it land, the private grief that has shaped his distance without announcing itself. She thinks of her own smaller abandonment and feels the edges soften, not because pain compares, but because pain recognizes pain. Julian says he learned then how public moments can turn cruel, how crowds remember spectacle but forget context. He says that is why he intervened tonight, not to rescue, but to refuse the pattern. Elena absorbs this, surprised by the tenderness threaded through his control. She tells him she did not want to be anyone's symbol. Julian meets her eyes now, steady. He says she was never a symbol to him. She was a person sitting alone in a room that had decided to make her small. The distinction matters. It lands with warmth. Elena admits she was afraid that accepting his help would erase her agency. That power has a way of doing that without noticing. Julian nods, acknowledging the risk. He says power should expand choice, not replace it, and that when it fails, it should be named. Elena smiles faintly. The idea feels radical and familiar at once. A car passes, headlights flaring, then fading. The city resumes its hum. Elena realizes this is the first conversation of the night that belongs only to them, unobserved, unrecorded. She feels the pull toward honesty strengthen. She tells him she learned to survive rooms by anticipating harm, by smiling before she needed to. She tells him it is exhausting to be prepared all the time. Julian listens, then says that preparation is useful, but it should not be permanent housing. The line stays with her. He asks what she wants now. The question is open, not a test. Elena considers the night behind them, the whispers that will travel ahead, the image already circulating without consent. She says she wants to end the night without borrowing courage from anyone else, even him. Julian accepts this without flinching. He says he will call a car and walk her to it. Nothing more. They stand in quiet companionship while he texts. Elena notices how the space between them feels deliberate, respectful. When the car arrives, the driver steps out, recognizing Julian and offering a deferential nod. Julian opens the door for Elena and waits. She hesitates, then turns to him. She thanks him, not for protection, but for choice. Julian inclines his head, acknowledging the difference. He says that whatever happens next, he will not rewrite tonight to suit anyone else. Elena steps into the car, the seat cool against her skin. As the door closes, Julian remains on the curb, hands still, expression composed but not distant. The car pulls away. Elena watches him recede through the rear window, the streetlight shrinking to a point of amber. Her phone vibrates with messages she does not read. She presses her forehead lightly to the glass, heart steady, mind alive. She understands that something irrevocable has occurred, not because of a touch or a promise, but because two people chose truth in a moment designed for performance. As the city carries her forward, Elena wonders what will happen when the private understanding they forged meets the public consequences waiting in daylight, and whether the steadiness she felt under that streetlight will survive the noise to come. Morning arrives with consequences. Elena wakes to her phone vibrating against the nightstand, notifications stacking faster than she can read them, names she recognizes and numbers she does not. A photo has surfaced, grainy but unmistakable, the two of them stepping through the reception doors together. Julian's profile calm, Elena's chin lifted. Captions speculate. Comment threads invent histories. She sits on the edge of the bed, letting the noise wash over her until it loses shape. The steadiness from the night before feels distant but not gone, like a muscle she must choose to use. She showers, dresses, and makes coffee she barely tastes. By mid-morning, messages shift from curiosity to accusation. A former colleague asks if she planned it. A distant friend asks if she is okay. Someone sends a link to a gossip site that names Julian in full, attaching numbers to him, as if wealth explains motive. Elena closes the app. She remembers what it felt like under the streetlight, the quiet clarity of choice. At the same time, across town, Julian sits at a long table where glass walls reflect the city. Advisors speak in measured tones about optics and risk. They mention the foundation, donors who dislike distraction, a board member who prefers clean narratives. Julian listens without interrupting, hands folded, eyes steady. When they finish, he says that truth is not a distraction, and that controlling narratives corrodes trust. Silence follows. He dismisses the meeting early. Outside, his phone buzzes with a message from the bride, curt and strategic, suggesting he distance himself from unnecessary drama. He does not respond. Elena spends the afternoon fielding practical fallout. A client pauses a contract. Another asks to reschedule. She notices how quickly professional warmth cools when uncertainty enters the room. The old reflex urges her to apologize preemptively. She resists. She drafts a single sentence for anyone who asks, stating that she attended a wedding and left with a friend, nothing more. The restraint feels risky and honest. Late afternoon, Julian calls. He does not apologize. He asks how she is. The question matters. She tells him the truth, that she is fine and unsettled, that the noise is loud but manageable. He says the noise will get louder before it fades. He offers to handle it, to issue a statement that frames the night in terms people understand. Elena pauses. She hears the power in the offer and the trap. She tells him she does not want to be framed at all. She wants space to remain a person, not a symbol or a storyline. Julian accepts this without argument, though it costs him something she can hear in the brief silence that follows. He says he will not speak for her. He says he will speak for himself if necessary. The distinction is careful. As evening approaches, a charity gala Julian is scheduled to attend becomes a test. Advisors urge him to cancel. He goes anyway. Cameras flash. Questions fly. Julian answers one, simply, saying that kindness does not require permission and that protecting dignity is not a scandal. He refuses to elaborate. The clip spreads. Commentators split. Elena watches the video later, surprised by the calm in his voice, the refusal to inflame. She recognizes the same steadiness that sheltered her without claiming her. Her phone buzzes again. A message from the bride arrives, thinly veiled, warning Elena to enjoy the attention while it lasts. Elena does not reply. She walks instead, letting the city recalibrate her breathing. She passes a cafe where she once waited for a call that never came, and feels the echo of who she used to be loose in its grip. At night, Julian texts to check in. He says there will be pressure. He says some people will try to make her small again to restore their balance. Elena types, then deletes, then sends a simple reply, I know. She adds that she is not asking him to fix it. He responds that he knows. The exchange steadies her. Meanwhile, the room that once decided for her tries again, louder now, less patient. Stories sharpen. Motives are assigned. Elena feels the pull to disappear intensify, the temptation to step back into old patterns for relief. She resists by choosing one thing she will not surrender. Her silence on terms she does not control. She sleeps lightly. In the morning, a new development breaks. A board member leaks concern. An invitation is rescinded. The stakes rise. Julian stands at the edge of a larger decision, one that will cost him influence if he chooses wrongly. Elena senses it before he says a word, the way pressure travels through absence. When his call comes, it is brief. He tells her there will be a moment soon when he must choose publicly whether to step forward or step away. He tells her she owes him nothing either way. Elena closes her eyes, feeling the weight of that truth. The story has reached the point where quiet choices demand visible consequences, and she knows that whatever happens next will reveal who they are when the room grows unforgiving. The moment arrives without fanfare, announced by an agenda item and a microphone that hums once before settling. The foundation hosts its annual briefing at a downtown hall, a neutral room designed for credibility, and the press fills the back rows with quiet anticipation. Elena watches from the side, unseen, choosing distance over disguise. She stands near a column where the light softens edges and listens as names are called, figures cited, impact summarized. Julian sits on the stage, hands folded, posture composed. The same steadiness she felt under the streetlight now amplified by the room. When his turn comes, the moderator frames the question carefully, asking about leadership, values, and the recent attention that has followed him into spaces it does not usually enter. A ripple passes through the audience. Elena feels it like a change in weather. Julian thanks the moderator and does not look at his notes. He speaks slowly, not to perform calm, but to practice it. He says leadership is not the art of avoiding scrutiny, but the discipline of choosing what scrutiny reveals. He says that dignity is not a private luxury and that rooms often decide who deserves it before listening. He pauses, allowing the words to settle. Cameras adjust. He continues, saying that he attended a wedding where someone was made smaller by omission, and that he chose to stand beside her because neutrality would have been a lie. The room holds its breath. He says he will not offer names, not because there is something to hide, but because the point is not the story, it is the choice. He says he accepts the consequences of that choice, including discomfort from those who prefer clean narratives. He ends by stating that if the Foundation's work is to mean anything, it must extend beyond statements and into moments that test convenience. The microphone hums again as he steps back. Applause begins unevenly, then steadies. Some hands remain still. Elena feels a surge that is not triumph, but relief, the quiet kind that arrives when something essential is finally named. In the hallway afterward, advisors gather with practiced concern. Julian thanks them and says he will meet later. He does not argue. He does not explain. He walks past the cameras, offering no additional quotes. Outside, Elena waits where the crowd thins. Julian finds her without searching. They stand a few feet apart, acknowledging the boundary they have kept since the night it all began. Elena tells him she watched. He nods, not seeking approval. She says it sounded like a goodbye. He considers this, then says it sounded like a beginning that cost something. She asks what it will cost him. He says influence, perhaps invitations, certainly ease. He says he is willing. The simplicity of it lands harder than a promise. A reporter calls out a question. Julian raises a hand, declining. Elena notices the way he chooses restraint as an act, not a retreat. They walk together down the block, the city absorbing them. Julian asks if she wants to speak now or later. Elena says later. She needs to sit with what she feels before naming it. He accepts this without disappointment. At the corner, he stops. He tells her that whatever comes next, he will not use her as proof of anything. Elena thanks him and says she will not borrow his certainty to outrun her own. They share a brief smile, unguarded. A car idles nearby. Julian asks if she wants a ride. She declines, choosing the walk. He respects it. As they part, Elena senses the weight lift and settle again in a different configuration. She walks home through streets that feel newly scaled, not smaller or larger, just truer. Messages wait on her phone, some supportive, some sharp. She does not answer. At home, she sits by the window and watches the city breathe. She thinks about rooms and choices and how easily one can become a story if not careful. She thinks about the difference between being seen and being used. The night deepens. Somewhere across town, Julian sits alone in an office that feels quieter than before. He removes his jacket and sets it carefully on the chair, a small ritual of order after a day of disorder. He looks out at the same city, considering the bridges he has burned and the ground he has gained. Neither of them reaches out. The restraint holds. In the silence that follows, a new question forms, not yet spoken, about whether two people who chose truth under pressure can choose something else when the pressure returns, sharper and more personal, demanding more than alignment and less than certainty. The days that follow soften the edges without erasing the lines. Elena returns to work, quieter projects at first, clients cautious but curious, the kind of recalibration that happens after a room learns you will not beg for entry. She walks the city more, choosing routes with light and space, practicing the steadiness she found under pressure. Julian keeps his distance, honoring the boundary they set, yet his presence lingers in small ways. An article forwarded without commentary, a Venu recommendation when she asks for one, a silence that feels intentional rather than absent. One evening, weeks later, Elena receives an invitation that surprises her, a modest fundraiser at a community hall far from glass towers, hosted by the foundation Julian reshaped after the briefing. The note is simple, no expectations, no cameras promised. She attends alone. The room is smaller, warmer, the kind of place where chairs scrape and people introduce themselves twice. Julian arrives late, unobtrusive, greeting volunteers by name. When he sees Elena, he does not approach immediately. He waits until the room settles, until choice can breathe. They speak by the refreshment table, trading observations, easing back into the cadence that once protected them. Julian tells her he stepped down from a board role that required silence when it mattered most. Elena tells him she declined a contract that wanted a version of her she no longer offers. The symmetry is not perfect, but it is honest. They do not define anything. They stand beside a window and watch the evening deepen. At the end of the event, as chairs stack and lights dim, Julian asks if she would like to walk. She says yes. The city feels familiar again, not a test but a companion. They stop at a crosswalk where the signal flickers. Elena tells him she has been thinking about rooms, about how often they decide who speaks and who is spared. Julian says rooms can be taught, slowly, by example. The light changes. They cross. On a quiet block, Elena stops and turns to him. She says that night at the wedding was never meant to become a story. He says stories begin when people choose differently than expected. She smiles. He does not reach for her hand. He waits. Elena closes the space herself, resting her palm lightly against his sleeve, a question rather than a claim. Julian meets her eyes and answers by staying, by letting the moment exist without spectacle. They share a kiss that is brief and unannounced, more confirmation than crescendo. It does not belong to an audience. It belongs to them. Weeks later, a photo surfaces anyway, taken by chance, unremarkable and kind. It fades quickly. What remains is quieter. Elena finds that rooms respond differently now, not because of who stands beside her, but because of how she stands. Julian learns that power can be practiced as patience, that influence grows when it refuses to consume. They continue without labels, without rush, choosing alignment over display. The wedding that once threatened to define Elena becomes a footnote, a hinge in memory that swings towards something sturdier. And if there is a lesson in their story, it is not about rescue or romance born from spectacle. It is about the courage to choose dignity in a moment designed to take it. About the way small, steady decisions can change the temperature of a room. If this story moved you, if you have ever felt smaller in a place that promised celebration, remember that you are allowed to choose yourself without permission. Thank you for listening. If you found value here, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need it. Your support helps us tell more stories that linger long after the room goes quiet.